Good morning, everyone. My name's Tony Metcalf. I'm from the Healthcare Technologies Institute, and on behalf of Matt, Ivan, and myself, I'd like to thank Yanis and the team at Birmingham Tech Week for allowing us to have this panel meeting this morning, responding to the demand for tech. What we're going to do is we've all recorded our talks, and so we'll run those back to back, and there'll be instructions in my talk what you've got to do in terms of questions and the chat. But let's start the session this morning with the videos. Thank you. My name's Tony Metcalf, and I'm Industrial Professor of Wound Healing at the Healthcare Technologies Institute at the University of Birmingham. I'd like to thank Birmingham Tech Week for inviting us to hold this panel session today, which will be responding to the demand for tech. Just some housekeeping so that we can keep everyone online. If you could all perhaps keep your video cameras off, that would be great. And what we're going to do is have the 3 talks, and then at the end of that, we'll have the questions. If you have questions, please put those up, write them up into the chat, and then we will respond to them at the end of the talks. So this morning's agenda is basically me giving you an introduction to the Healthcare Technologies Institute. We'll then follow up with Matt Campbell-Hill, who is a Senior Fellow of Novel Medical Technologies at the University of Birmingham. And Matt will tell us about how he's been leading innovations in the fight against COVID-19. Matt will be then followed by Ivan Wall, who is Professor of Regenerative Medicine, Cell and Gene Therapy Bioprocessing at Aston University. He's also Deputy Director of the Lifetime Centre for Doctoral Training. And that Centre for Doctoral Training is trying to bring both academics and industry together, and how these collaborative projects could be the future of tech. So Ivan will tell us a little bit more about that. So over to my part for this morning, and it's really just to introduce you to the Healthcare Technologies Institute. We are in the Institute of Translational Medicine, which is the old Queen Elizabeth Hospital in Birmingham. We have suites of labs. You can see there in the middle panel, there's our chemistry lab. And then towards the right-hand side, you can see the bigger lab that we've got, where we do all sorts of things from mechanical testing, biological assays, some cell biology. We have a cell biology lab off that particular laboratory, and also a microscopy suite where we can do some really quite high-tech microscopy. So we've got lots of technology available at the HDI to help people out, and that's part and parcel of what I'm telling you about today. So what are the drivers for medical innovation? It's basically when you're developing a medical technology, it often comes from somebody, a clinician usually, asking a question of the scientist saying, well, can we do this to help these people out? Once that question is sort of thought about by both the scientist and the clinician, then there's an industrial push to actually move things forward, to try and come up with a way of innovating. And what's been critical for us at the HDI in that is Birmingham Health Partners. They've helped us establish strong working relationships with clinicians from across the region. And Birmingham Health Partners reach, as you can see in the panel towards the right there, just shows some of the numbers involved. 600 regional companies involved in the life sciences sector, a regional population, a diverse regional population of over 5 million people, 80 hospitals and specialist care centres, large amounts of money, as you can see from the top figure. But actually something to be proud of, we've got the largest medical devices cluster in the UK. Why would we want to develop healthcare technologies? Well, obviously earlier diagnosis is a fantastic thing to be able to achieve, and to intervene at the earliest possible stage in somebody's either traumatic incident or disease state. Healthier aging is a big thing now. We've got an aging population, and we need to think about how we make their life better, and better rehabilitation, whether you're young or old, and an improved quality of life is immensely important. But what comes with that is if people are of working age, then we can get them back to work faster and back to normal life. And that comes with its own economic benefits, as does that for an aging population too. So it's a sort of win-win situation, really, if we can get that technology to give us that earlier diagnosis. The environment also is critical. To innovate, you need all the things that you need to innovate. The new Queen Elizabeth Hospital and other local hospitals help with that. We have at Birmingham, the Scar-Free Centre for Conflict Wound Research, the NIHR Surgical Reconstruction and Microbiological Research Centre, the Royal Centres for Defence Medicine's also there on campus. We have link-ups with other universities. You will hear from Ivan in a bit, and he'll tell you about that, and local industries. You know, we have this great sort of consensus opinion and group of people that are constantly talking to one another. And we have these multidisciplinary research events where we get other people off campus from different disciplines. So from maths, into chemical engineering, from where we are, clinicians, biologists, immunologists. We've got a whole gamut of people that come in and when we talk to one another. That's the important thing. You need to break down those barriers, embracing those new areas of research, transferring those technologies between the areas, and hopefully generating solutions for real problems. Within a square mile of the healthcare technologies, so we are, if you look at this map, the little orange building that you can see there is the Institute of Translational Medicine, where we're on the 3rd floor. Behind us is the medical school. And beyond that, you can see the engineering quarter where mechanical, chemical, engineering are, the main campus, the social sciences quarter, all within sort of striking distance of where we are. Importantly, beyond that, we've got the hospitals. Queen Elizabeth Hospital is very close, the Women's Hospital also, the Children's Hospital as well, only 3 miles away, as is the Royal Orthopaedic Hospital that we also work with. Over the next few years, we're going to see the development of the Birmingham Life Science Campus, and that will also just be down in near the Selly Oak roundabout. So we will have a truly translational pathway for an idea to move from just an idea right through to being something real and innovative. Accelerating the development and uptake of medical technologies is important, and as we were talking earlier, I presented it in a very simple manner that there was this clinical push asking questions and the industrial pull rather, and the industrial push getting that technology moving forward and to create a medical technology, but there are lots of other things that impinge on that whole process. Regulation is a really important thing to think about from the outset. Is the idea that you've got something that is easily regulated or follows a nice pathway, or even if it doesn't, you need to engage with the regulators early to understand that. As part of that too, also is your technology scalable? Can you manufacture it? It might be fine if you've got a prototype, but if that widget or whatever it might be, a medical device, can't be upscaled, then you need to think about that, and those considerations need to be there from the beginning, as does protecting it. So intellectual property is a really important element of protecting your idea, making sure that it has viability and that nobody can move in on your area of interest in medical technology. All of this, of course, involves cost, as it comes as no surprise to any of you, I'm sure. So we used to have something at the HDI called MD Tech, and that was an ERDF supported program. We now have something called DEMAND, which is the Data Enabled Medical Technologies and Devices Hub. We support medical technologies and life sciences businesses at the SME level. We have examples ongoing at the minute where we're developing and testing apps, whether they be web or phone-based. We have products, so we can help with 3D printing. We can help up with prototyping, early prototyping with something like I was talking about just there with the manufacturer. We have other services, you know, understanding commercialization pathways. Some of us have been out there and spun out companies, so we have expertise within the team to help you with that, but also we have expertise on defining whether your technology is going to be a medical device or whether it would be a medicinal product. And if that's the case, there are obviously things that you need to think about, and we have experts in clinical trials that can help you, guide you through the process to getting towards that, and also grant writing to enable you to get money to sometimes get your idea off the ground. From a regulatory perspective, we also have a good understanding of that and have great relationships with the MHRA, but also the new medical device regulations are coming in, and the ISO regulations we have an intimate understanding of. So I think, you know, we could help anybody that needs that kind of help with that sort of thing. If you're interested in demand, you need to contact Derek Sear, who is our business engagement manager, and Derek's email is there in the bottom corner, and he can take you through some of the things that are going on in demand. So we support SMEs as defined by EU recommendations. We're hopeful in giving business assists, hopefully sustaining a new idea and a new project that you might have going, and then hopefully helping you develop some revenue for that. The idea is that we can help create jobs by upskilling and increasing employment and sustainability. And we hope to improve and build revenue by improving new products, new services. And sometimes people come to us, you know, with just an idea. And it's that we can then help them develop towards developing a new company. Sometimes it can just be a sort of kernel of an idea that they've got, and we can tease that out and help them with these assists to see if there's any viability with it, to create sometimes pivots. So sometimes they come up with an idea and then you think, well, could it be used for this particular thing? And we develop that further with them and hopefully help. So we're here to help. That's basically what I'm trying to say. So the director of the Healthcare Technology Institute, Liam Grover, Professor Liam Grover, we already have some examples from his team that are being taken forward. Using a fluid gel technology, Liam has developed, as you can see in the top right-hand corner there, a sort of biomembrane that can be used for skin burns. And in the bottom right-hand corner, we're also looking at using that same fluid gel technology to create an eye drop that can be dropped onto the eye. And the idea is that it creates a contact lens almost on the eye that eventually will release therapeutics. And in this situation, we're looking at scarring in both burns, but from corneal abrasions. And we've had a lot of help in terms of funding from the Wellcome Trust, from the MRC, and recently the Scar-Free Foundation are helping fund this work towards phase 1 clinical trial, which will be next year. The Birmingham environment is a lean and agile translational setting. We have proven expertise in taking technologies, as you can see, to clinical trial. We have cross-disciplinary teams that make the process lean and cost-effective, taking an idea from a bench, can be a simple bench idea, right through to patient, or even bench right through to commercialization and market. We have good outsourcing interactions with the contract manufacturers and proven experience and dialogue with the regulators, such as the MHRA. Birmingham has all the elements for translation of technologies, and that comes about because of what I was saying earlier. We have good interactions with Birmingham Health Partners, with local SMEs, other universities, as you'll see when Ivan talks, industry and funders and investors. We've all, this last 6-7 months, been trying to change our lives almost because of COVID-19, and that's produced a real response, a really quick response from the university, chemical engineering, and the HDI. We've been involved in producing large volumes of hand sanitizers, PPE, visors, masks. The university has been involved in delivering e-health and telemedicine innovations, and anti-infective nasal sprays is something that Liam has also been developing to try and combat COVID. You'll hear a little bit more from Matt about the development of resuscitation shields, and he's got an interesting story to tell you about that, so I won't take any of his thunder, but that will follow this talk. One of the things that has come out of it is that we need to be much more resilient. We need to ensure that supply chains are actually fit for any of these future types of shock. As you all know, you can see that the supply network for PPE and even cheap consumable items was unable to withstand the short-term increases in global demand. And, you know, just a year ago, we would never have thought that it was going to be the case that clinicians had to be careful about thinking about rationing PPE. How do we guard against that? Well, the supply networks need to be designed so that we're able to respond to any future system shocks. And we need to build resilience. The systems need to be in place to ensure that any rapid prototyping, supply and provision is scalable, but it also has the right governance and the authorizations in place, SOPs, whatever it needs, the paperwork that allows us to get it to the front line. So ultimately, what will the HDI and Demand Hub lead to? Well, it will lead to medical innovation, training for scientists, for app developers, for engineers, for clinicians. We hope to have good outreach across the regions, helping to drive the local life science economy and the regional growth. We'll help the life science community, local SMEs, and the infrastructure that we have within not only our universities, but other universities like Aston, and Ivan will tell you more about that. But we need to become more responsive, more reactive, and resilient to these system shocks. I'd like to thank these people for their involvement and for the funding. And we'll take questions at the end of this panel session. And I'd now like to hand over to Matt Campbell-Hill. Thank you for listening.
Hello there. Thank you for inviting me along today. I'm Matt Campbell-Hill. I'm a senior fellow in emerging medical technologies, and I've worked for quite a few years with NICE, reviewing about 300 medical devices and about 60 advanced pharmaceuticals, and then also on to with the MHRA and across various parts of the Department of Health and Social Care, working on emerging medical apps and how we're going to utilize them. Today I'm going to talk about how I and a few other people, including Dr. Richard Williams, also from the ITM, responded to COVID. Now, we were contacted early on by an anaesthetist called Dr. E.J. De Silva over at the Royal Orthopaedic Hospital, who was concerned about essentially contamination, not just to himself, but his wider team when performing extubations, but just with people in the area. There was a known issue with getting the right amount and right quality of PPE, but taking it from there, it was, what are we doing wrong here? What can we do to get this to the next level? And so one of the things we thought about was essentially, what if we turned it on its head and looked at other ways that it's been done before? And of course, Ebola is the most recent, and we've been using isolation tents and that, and for many, many decades before we've been using isolation tents. And so that's what we decided to go with, so to look at that. I'm going to play you a short video now, and I'll talk over it whilst it goes. And this is about aerosol shields. Imagine if you're a first aider and you are out, or you may not even be a fully qualified first aider, maybe a basic life support, but you come across someone who is in need of support. Now they've been passed out. Now, what do? You'd love to be wearing full PPE. Now, the best PPE is obviously a spacesuit. But even if you're wearing a spacesuit, £10 million worth of PPE, if someone coughs, you're going to have a visceral reaction. You're going to want to move away from that. It's not a nice thing to get on you. Even wearing a bulletproof face mask, someone coughs and you get sputum or anything else up onto you, you're going to try and get that away from you. You're going to try and rub that away. And it's on your mind whilst it's attached to your body. So what about if we just change that and we just put a small screen in between you and the person coughing? Well, it's very different. That screen doesn't have to be very thick. You can pull up your visor, it doesn't matter. You feel much better because you'll see where the sputum stops. If you can see that they're enclosed and they're encased behind it. So now if you're that first aider, what can you do? Well, this is what we did with the aerosol shield. If someone coughs inside an aerosol shield, it's a small, lightweight tent, miniature pop-up tent, pop it over them, and you can interact with them. We've got multiple access, self-sealing access holes. You can reach in, you can pass things in and out. You can perform CPR, you can do everything from intubation and extubation, you can do oral surgery. It's being used in theatres across the NHS now. It's being used in anaesthesia and anaesthetics rooms. And that's what we wanted to achieve. We wanted something small and lightweight that gave that isolation. So that's your aerosol shield. Now, oh, we're going to play it again, always handy. What that has led on to, which has been quite interesting, is a lot of really positive press, people coming up to us and talking about a lot of the time they're saying to us, why hasn't anyone done this before? Well, it's a good question, and one I kind of respond with. How long did it take us to make the wheel? We're not claiming to make something as groundbreaking as that, and you can see the picture here. That's me on the left in the wheelchair, and that's Dr. E.J. De Silva at the ROH, just displaying what we've designed there. It's not as groundbreaking as the wheel, but it is one of those things that needs must, and that's what encourages development. It's when the right time, the right combination of people, but then giving yourself the space and the time to respond to it is really important, and that's what we managed to do. Now, what you can see in front of you is this article, the Raconteur report, which was part of the Times. We're looking at the top 10 innovations worldwide in 2020, and decided that we were number 9, so that was great. And we've had continuing support. We've been in some really brilliant publications from across the BBC in multiple countries, to GQ magazine and various healthcare journals and like that. So that's been great. The clinical feedback has been overwhelmingly positive. We've had a more than 90% rate of clinicians who tried it saying they want to continue using it. But what does that look like, I suppose, around the country? It's certainly not everywhere. It seems to be pockets where you've had individual people that have heard of it, or they tried it and then gone, right, what else can we do with that? You can see, obviously, there's a little concentration there in Birmingham, but that wider spread has been interesting. And what you can't see here is the types of environments. This is everything from surgery-focused hospitals like the ROH, to GP practices, and also actually there's a new one we haven't got up there. It should be in Northwest Wales, which is from the mountain rescue teams. But I think, you know, it's okay for me to sit here as a designer talking about it and why we think it's important, but I'm just going to let some other people, and these are the early adopters who were doing our trialing the very first version. And they didn't have much time, bless them. We went from knowing about the project or the being told about the issue, I think it was Friday the 29th or 27th of April, and we prototyped and tested and then launched within 6 days. So I'll just play these 2 videos quickly.
Hi there, my name's Danielle Harrison. I'm an ODP at the Royal Orthopaedic Hospital. Today I got to use the shield tent on my patient with the anaesthetic doctor. It was very effective. It made me feel safe. The patient felt safe before they went under general anaesthetic. They knew that they had this shield tent over them. So it was very effective to making us all feel safe. While we was doing the intubation, there was enough room to manoeuvre. We actually had a difficult intubation, so we used a bougie under the tent, and we also used the glidoscope. Going forward, depending on the size of the patient will possibly depend on the tent size, so there could be different variety of sizes.
So I think the important thing from their point of view, obviously she's wearing full PPE there, but there's still, as we said, is that stressor of having anything get onto you and also the rest of the team, but who else hasn't got full PPE there? And part of that is, of course, the environment. The environment doesn't have full PPE, and that requires extra cleaning. Now, there's a lot of work that's been done over the years on how good PPE is at various different levels, and for example, the FFP3 mask, which is said to reduce the rate of transmission by 80%. But that was based on influenza, and what we do know is that COVID seems to be far more infectious than influenza, so there isn't really good data on that. So these staff obviously know that, and that's why they're quite keen to use it. We were quite keen to reduce the stress for them, and I'll play this next one.
Hello, this is Maddie. She's one of our senior nurses in recovery.
Hi, I'm Maddie Newcomb. I work in recovery from ROH, and I'm one of the band 6 in here. I've been working here for 16 years, and I think this is a great invention to protect our staff, especially when they're doing intubation, as well as the ODPs and recovery nurses, and when they're removing LMA and all airway management. It's a really great invention.
And do you think that you would feel safer using it?
I feel safe. Everybody feel safe. Even the porter, when they transfer patient going to the ward, they will be more safe with this.
Thank you very much.
There's a really important part there, talking about that wider staff impact, because again, we've got 2 members of staff here who probably have access to the correct level of PPE, but what about everyone else? Patients that come into hospitals, whether they've got COVID confirmed or it's unconfirmed, or perhaps they're suppressed. But really, we're the ones who are infectious, and it's not just going to be COVID. There are lots of other pathogens that we're going to be concerned about going forward, and more concerned than we were. What about all the rest of the staff? Those support staff, it's really important. The likes of your porters, the managers, and any other staff coming through. When a patient comes into a busy A&E, it's very, very easy to see how within the first half an hour they're going to come within 6-7 feet of 20 staff in those first 30 minutes. Now, if that person is coughing and sputtering, or if they're contaminated, what's going to happen? How's that going to transport, and how is that person then going to go through the rest of the hospital? So giving people this extra level of protection just really makes it so simple. And this is, again, it's lightweight, it's cheap. You can see we haven't tried to make it look like it's made out of palladium or anything. It is meant to be functional. But what was important is we didn't want to add to the problems that people were already experiencing with low-level PPE or poor PPE, poor quality PPE that was arriving. And that was actually adding stress to people. Like, is this going to protect me? Is this face shield that I'm wearing, is it going to shatter and do something bad? So we used clinical grade optically clear PVC. So although you can see a bit of reflection at the moment on this PVC here, actually when you're working and you're looking through it, and the lights shine pretty much through it without reflection. And we've got you can see some bars around the back. Where you want it to be stiffer, you can put those bars in place. It takes seconds to put up. Once you've done one once, it takes you less than 30 seconds to put up your second one, and that includes putting these straight bars in. It comes already packed with these semicircle bars in. So what does that look like, of course, for the next person? These are the people that are out in the field or who are already in the hospital, sorry, and so what's it going to look like for someone who's out in the field? So let's have a look here. And this again is another area we think it's really, really helpful. It's for people who maybe are responding. Now, in this case, we use a paramedic, but you can see exactly how it would be for anyone else doing basic life support.
It just fell over. All right, mate, I don't think he's breathing. You'll keep doing that for me while I get this defib off.
Now, this is standard procedure for paramedics, which is why they thought they'd just show you all the way through. Because actually, we never did pay this poor guy for his t-shirt. He's the owner of that garage. The gentleman doing compressions is a nurse practitioner himself and also a paramedic trainer. But of course it made sense to get people in. There's some really excellent acting that's about to happen.
Press
I
the
won't spoil
flashing
it.
orange button now. Deliver shock
Right,
now.
use that back for me. Everybody clear?
Shock delivered.
Right, you jump back on the chest for me.
There we go, worthy of casualty that. We particularly like this video because this was done for us by that paramedic there in the black shirt, because he'd seen it and really liked it and wanted to see how he could get it out for his colleagues. Now what you've got here, again, so quick to put up. The long tab you can see here goes down the patient's body. Now it's clinical grade. You can spit in place, you can continue compressions through it. It's obviously wiped clean. It's the sort of material you expect to see in hospital. But now, this is possibly one of the more awkward situations where you haven't got a bed, and so you can't connect the shield to anything. But even then, you can see how he's been able to remove that mask off that patient and get in close and see. and that makes a really big difference. And the only thing we do say is if you're using high flow oxygen, and obviously they're not here, they're just bagging. If you're using high flow oxygen, you can't then shock, because it turns out our tent is so good at containing aerosol, we actually also contain the oxygen. So we're glad we tested that early on. But we were originally aiming with the shield just to really keep hold of the most worrying droplet sizes, the mid-size and large-size droplets. Now, we know that those are the high viral load, and those are things that really come out with from a projectile incident, so someone coughing or vomiting, something like that. But also, if you're taking anything in and out of that person's mouth and you're putting it around, and again, you've got it in a contained unit. What you didn't see in that video, but you might be able to understand, is with this long flap, when you want to remove this, you just roll it back toward you this way, and that long flap covers over, so anything that was contaminated stays in there, and then you can dispose of it. But actually, the way we've designed this is this now would stay with this patient, and if he was shown to have COVID or another aerosol-borne contagion, that would stay with him for as long as it was needed. Multiple interventions, multiple days, it's not a problem until you start seeing any issues. But one of the other things we wanted to do when we used the high-quality materials, it was also, let's get this made properly. So we partnered with a company called Airkey, who were really helpful and instrumental early days in helping us get it going so quickly. The important thing about them is they're one of the top manufacturers of medical isolation tents in the world. Currently already supply the NHS and the MOD and many others, and did a lot throughout the Ebola crisis. So it was important that when it arrived into people's spaces, that it felt like it was solid. And that's why it will last. We actually haven't had any feedback yet of despite following hundreds and hundreds out there, haven't had any feedback of anything failing, which has been great. And even when there was a clinician that felt uncomfortable using it, we had one report of a clinician feeling uncomfortable using it, they didn't have to stop the difficult procedure they were doing. That was an intubation. It was a difficult intubation. They carried on doing it, and it was safe. But if they had needed to, it'd be very easy to remove. Unlike what we'd seen, and again, partly the reason that we were doing this, these big, heavy plastic, clear plastic boxes with sharp corners, and you can't move them out of the way. They weigh over 5 kilos in many cases, and you can't clean them. This is easy to store. They're flat down, and again, you just keep it with the patient for as long as they need it. So if they're in a COVID secure ward, great. But then if you need to take them out to theatre or to radiology or anything else, you can transport them in that. You're protecting the environment and all the staff that are going past, and anyone else that's going to go through that area in the following 3 hours or 3 days. It's a big time, isn't it, really? We don't know. We can't clear that up yet. That's how long it is infectious for. It's somewhere between 3 hours and 3 days in trials so far. So short of putting 10 times the amount of cleaning staff out there and having them clean every single corridor over and over again, like the Forth Bridge, is what we actually can do. So so that's who we are, and we've set up in the Biz Inn. I think something we haven't been able to cover, which I'll just cover briefly, was how we did this with regards to money. You can't do this without money. We put in a bit of money ourselves, about £10,000–15,000, which we got between us, and we had a small team that I just pulled together along with EJ, and including my wife, who's a GP. And at that point, we said, well, how else can we do this? And we went out to crowdfund, and we had a friend help us set up a crowdfunder that raised us about £35,000. So then we were around 50K, and that got us going. That gave us enough to get a good few hundred shields out to the NHS for free. At that point, we started working with the HSN and Midtech, and they both supported us, and we did a very quick turnaround, which was very helpful. That brought in, they both gave us their maximum amounts, which was great to get this moving and see what it looks like. And that was followed by Innovation Wales and the Welsh government coming in and saying, right, what if you hadn't had to do it in 6 days? What would this really look like? What's the next version going to look like that's going to be long-term use? So we put together what we'd love to be able to do and what we had to make, and really pleased to say that they came back to us and they supported us with a further grant of 250,000. So In the first 4 months, we raised about £400,000 and we protected thousands of NHS clinicians. The numbers are huge, it's great. We're still trying to get more and more out there. We are selling them pretty much at cost. So very happy to talk to anyone that has any thoughts. We're now helping the dental market. We work at how to do it. We've done an altered version for that. Yeah, that's really where we've got to. So I think when we come to the end, if there's any questions, do let us know. But really, if you do engage with us on any of these channels, but look out for us in the press. If you Google us now, there's a huge amount. We've been very fortunate. I think we had a media report, commissioned a small media report just to check who had been looking at us, what was interesting, and we've had over 1.3 million unique readers of articles on us from all around the world, and over 7,000 social media engagements. So there's clearly the desire out there to do something that's sustainable but cheap, that makes sense. So thank you for inviting me to speak, as I said, and I look forward to answering your questions.
Thank you, Matt. That was great. We'll now go over to our Ivan's talk.
Good morning. My name is Ivan Wall, and I'm Professor of Regenerative Medicine, Cell and Gene Therapy Bioprocessing at Aston University. And I was asked to speak this morning on academia and industry collaborations, and in particular how collaborative PhD projects could be the future of tech. And I'm going to share with you some thoughts around how I think that collaborative PhDs can address the national need for advancing technology innovation, particularly in the healthcare sector, which is sort of more health technology sector, which is where I work. So in terms of a little bit of background, I think there's a very clear need and opportunity to grow the UK's innovation base to advance technology across multiple sectors. Now, as I said, I'm going to focus today on life sciences and sort of the health tech sector, but I think a lot of what I will share will be applicable to other sectors where technology innovation is critical. Now, some key areas of emerging strengths have been identified where the UK is globally very competitive and where technology advances could be really transformative. So particular areas that spring to mind include digital health, advanced therapies that include cell and gene therapy products, and also precision medicine. And these are all areas where innovation is needed to unlock the full potential of those areas, and where the UK can continue to achieve success and be globally leading. Now, clearly the government plays an important role in shaping the innovation landscape. We have the life sciences industrial strategy that speaks to different recommendations for what the government ought to be sort of supporting and funding and really sort of driving forward. In sort of parallel with that, we have a number of national assets, and you know, in sort of my mind, I'm thinking about things like catapult centres, where we have centres that can support the business development activities of companies to really help them get their products to market. And I think government is also really important, obviously, in incentivising and in providing access to funding through sort of UKRI and Innovate UK and so on. I think in terms of needs, there's also an incentive to innovate as a means of responding to threats. We've seen a great deal of innovation and entrepreneurship in response to COVID-19. We also have Brexit looming, and that brings uncertainty around access to a larger and more diverse talent pool. So, these things are all very critical, and I think by evolving a culture of innovation, we'll actually be able to inspire and grow the talent pipeline, and therefore really sort of drive the cycle of bringing through people who can innovate and will be very entrepreneurial in the way that they think. So in terms of sort of the national funding landscape for collaboration, I think it's fair to say that funders really encourage collaboration across academia and industry for technology innovation. And certainly with UKRI, in many instances, co-creation partnerships are actually a part of the assessment criteria. Now, there are sort of various schemes that support tech development at different technology readiness levels. So the more sort of industry-driven projects are those that are funded by Innovate UK, so smart grants, manufacturing made smarter, knowledge transfer partnerships. These are things that are really sort of led by industry and supported by academia. We also then have with EPSRC a number of initiatives that really draw on co-creation, and I think that the recent example that I want to share with you is the Transformative Healthcare Technologies Call. So here the sort of remit is the creation of innovative technologies that will transform healthcare over a 30-year horizon. And so here EPSRC have been looking for high risk, high return projects that would be implemented in 2 phases. So the first phase, the development phase, that will fund a number of, feasibility projects. And then from those feasibility projects, they are all allowed to bid into phase 2, and 4 to 6 of those will be taken forward as substantive research programs over a sort of 5-year sort of program. And I think a key take-home message that I want to get across is actually for a sort of program like this, where there's up to sort of £4 to £6 million available per project. Co-creation is a critical part of the assessment criteria, and in particular co-creation with industry and clinical partners. A second area where EPSRC really sort of put funding and look for co-creation is in their centres for doctoral training, which I'll sort of come on to in a moment. So in terms of, the opportunity for collaborative PhDs in technology innovation, we very much sort of have the attitude that if we provide PhD students with the right interdisciplinary environment and training, then we should be able to enable the sort of creative thinking that will drive innovation. So PhDs really do provide us with an opportunity for high risk, high reward research that will, hopefully sort of lead to scientific and technology breakthroughs in terms of development of new tools, development of platforms that may be used sort of to produce a multitude of different products, and also enabling technologies that will help to overcome barriers that current technology state of the art provide or leave us with. So what I really wanted to do, get into the crux of today's presentation, is to talk to you about the EPSRC SFI Centre for Doctoral Training that we're involved in. It's the Lifetime CDT. It has a number of partners all sort of listed at the bottom of this slide. And so I'll talk you through the CDT concept and then what we hope to do with our particular CDT. That's a partnership between Birmingham, Aston, Glasgow, and then Galway. So the idea of CDTs is that they are centres that bring together diverse skills and expertise to train engineer and scientist PhDs. So the goal of bringing together sort of interdisciplinary expertise is that we can deliver graduates who have skills, knowledge and confidence to tackle today's evolving issues and future challenges. And these issues, whether it's sort of healthcare or food security or energy, more and more they are moving outside of the silos of traditional subject areas. And so we really need students who, when they graduate, they can be very interdisciplinary, spanning multiple different subject areas to address some of these really quite cutting edge challenges. The EPSRC doctoral training centres, they also provide a supportive an exciting environment for students, where we can sort of help to create new working cultures for them. We can help them to build relationships through the sort of cohorts that they are a part of, and through the wider networks and the universities that they engage in, and also to forge lasting links with industry. So that's really important for us, that the students actually build a network and hopefully start to build the kind of contacts with industry that then will, help them to, move into careers on graduation. Now, with the EPSRC funded CDTs, the students are funded for 4 years. And, obviously the students will undertake a project as part of their training, but they will also undertake technical and transferable skills training. A lot of the CDT centres will leverage additional studentships, so with funding from either industry or the university or external private funding. Now, our particular centre is called the Lifetime CDT, and Lifetime stands for Engineered Tissues for Discovery, Industry and Medicine. And this CDT is a partnership between Glasgow, Birmingham, Aston, and then in Ireland, Galway. And EPSRC fund the UK component, and then Galway are funded by Science Foundation Ireland. And our goal is to train 84 PhD students over a 5 annual intake period to drive innovation in non-animal technologies. And our second intake have actually just started their training in September, albeit in a slightly different way to what we'd hoped, due to not being able to travel at the moment. But non-animal technologies are basically engineered tissues. So this is sort of bioengineered cellular tissues produced using biomaterial scaffolds and organ-on-a-chip systems. And we want to use those for drug development. So in terms of why we are focusing on these non-animal technologies, well, there is a clear national need to do so in order to advance drug development. Basically, it costs around £1.5 billion and 15 years to develop a drug. In recent years, we've had access to high throughput technologies, and that's increased the number of drug leads, but the success rate of launching new drugs to market has still remained very static. 65% of small molecule drug projects fail, but only 23% of those projects will fail before clinical trials. In other words, that they will fail where it's cheap to fail. The rest will go on to fail in the clinical trials, either in phase 1, typically due to toxicity or concerns with safety, or in phase 2 and 3, typically because of lack of efficacy. Now the issue is actually that preclinical screening relies on monolayer cell lines that tend to be a bit too simple to try and gain any information about what human physiology may react like. Or they use in vivo models in animals, but again, animal models are not reflective of human physiology. And because of this, there is a need in the UK and globally to create humanized non-animal technologies for medicines discovery, safety testing and functional validation. So to help with this need, our Centre for Doctoral Training will train interdisciplinary doctoral students in order to drive innovation and then hopefully realise its associated economic benefits. All of our lifetime students pursue world-leading PhDs. All of our students are also engaged in cohort building and professional development that will help them to sort of build their sort of professional skills, and we do that with the help of industry and the third sectors. So our industry partners are all very active in helping us to train our students, not just in terms of being partners on projects, but also in terms of helping to train them, to give them the right professional skills that they themselves would want to see in students or graduates who apply to them for a job. And basically we'll train the UK community of of leaders across the whole environment for non-animal technologies to hopefully become a really important part of medicines in the next few years. So in terms of the industry partners we engage with, we have a number of partners involved in our Centre for Doctoral Training already. So I've listed them here, and I'm not going to go through them by name, but the point that I want to get across is that, you know, they really sort of span quite broadly different areas. So we have sort of industrial partners, we have charity involved, we have NHS involved, and then we also have people more involved in sort of things like regulation and manufacture. In terms of how we go about co-creating our projects to bring together this sort of academic and industry partners, to make these innovative PhDs, we took a sort of two-pronged approach. The first thing we did was organise an industry day, and at the industry day we invited lots of people in, and we basically gave in-person project pitches and had partnering sessions where we could all meet different potential partners. So, you know, the industrialists could meet the academics, and the academics could meet the industry partners, and we could start to identify, where potential project ideas were emerging from. The second part actually involved looking at the application form, and a key point on this is that the application form that we've made, it does take a little bit of time to complete, and we've done this deliberately just to ensure that we can drive meaningful co-creation. One thing that we don't want to see with PhD projects is, an academic writes a project and then they sort of say, oh, well, we've got sort of an industry partner who will, help out. And then actually it becomes, potentially not a meaningful relationship. We want to drive innovation in technology. And to do that, we really need to sort of make sure that the partnerships are truly collaborative. So the way that we do things is we make sure that every project has both academic and industry partners involved, and this sort of includes funding levels as well. We sort of make sure that the projects are funded to the correct level that will enable them to be successful. We make sure that the academic supervisors have had their equality, diversity and inclusion training, unconscious bias training, and up-to-date sort of supervisor training, so that we're taking people who will be the very best supervisors to take on our students. In terms of the project, on the application form we provide a description of the project, and also then the advert that the students will respond to, that they see advertised. We also then have to write down information about the placement that the students will have, and here what we want is for the student to be granted a placement where they actually spend a chunk of time working with the industry stakeholder, and we then also sort of make reference to how it will enhance their training experience. We also have to make sure that the projects align with the themes of our Centre for Doctoral Training, so they either have to fall under cell and tissue engineering, or cell sensing and cell testing, or drug discovery, translation, and manufacturing. The interdisciplinary training is a real key part of our PhD, and actually it's the difference between just a normal PhD and a CDT PhD. It's really about the cohort. So actually we started to, when we brought the students in, the first thing that they did was undergo skills training rotation. So our students last year, they spent the first week in Birmingham, and then they spent a week in Galway, and then they spent a week in Glasgow. And over those 3 weeks, they had sort of specialist lectures and lab sessions in the different specialties across the 3 institutions. And then there's a whole range of different activities that the students will be engaged in. Some of them we haven't been able to run in person, due to travel restrictions over the last few months, but we hope that as we move into 2021, particularly as we sort of hit the summer, we'll be able to initiate some of these training courses in person again. But the key thing to sort of get across is, the training that we deliver includes entrepreneur business school, there's a leadership program, project management, We get the students to do Dragon's Den as part of a team, so they actually, as part of their cohort building, they work together to build a pitch to give to potential investors. They have their industry placement, and then we also get them to look at sort of how to design a manufacturing process and what a regulatory submission would look like. So these are all things that that the students can do the best PhD in the world, but in order to translate and to really make the most of technology innovations that they may realize, they really need to understand the wider ecosystem that helps to take innovations through to market, and we, through our program, will do that with them. So just to sort of finish, this kind of PhD program where interdisciplinary research is complemented with those entrepreneur and leadership skills, we think this is the way forward, so that we can produce a pipeline of talent and also ensure the best chance of success in delivering technology innovations to market. So thank you very much for listening, and I'm happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Ivan. That was a wonderful tour de force, and Matt as well, thank you. We're sort of running out of time, but I will ask a couple of quick questions. I think you alluded to it towards the end there, Ivan, in terms of what this cohort is going to be able to do. But what do you think it means for the students to have this level of different types of interaction with different types of people? I think it's quite novel.
Yes, of course. And I think, we're trying to sort of train future leaders, and we're trying to train people who will drive innovation and will, go into pharma and sort of make, sort of disruptive changes in the future. So I think having exposure to lots of different scientists, engineers, clinicians, and industrial partners is really just going to open their eyes, so that, they have the best chance of making the impact that they're capable of. And typically you don't have that in a normal PhD, because it focuses on a project, it focuses on a single molecule, or that the focus is so sort of deep that they don't really get that broader exposure. And I think, just sort of thinking about this from a sort of Birmingham wide perspective, the more that we can take our students and give them these experiences, the more chance that they will have to actually kind of make a difference in the region. So the CDT model for us is really about making sure that they can achieve their maximal potential, and keeping them sort of conscious of hopefully they will sort of turn that into something that benefits the region ultimately.
Yeah, fantastic. And Matt, what would you say were the sort of challenges that you faced bringing something to market so quickly and in an innovative way?
I think that the main thing, and actually we didn't face it because we realized that the main issue you get to begin with, which is that getting everyone to understand the same picture right at the beginning. And for that, you need to have a great team, but you need to be really, really clear with your communications. And I know you know that I talk about this a lot. Getting what we call what NICE term as the 1.1. If you look at any of the health technology reviews that NICE have done, they have the 1.1 statement, which is about 3 lines, which really, really clearly states exactly what you're going to do. And why that outcome is important. Once you've done that, it's very quickly easy to decide who is going to be in your team and who's going to help you drive this forward, because they're going to understand whether it's something they feel they can contribute to, or that they can put the effort and time into. Once that's done, everything else becomes quite easy. You spend less time going over issues, and as a team, we've tried to do that all the way through. If there's any kind of issue or any new part of the project we've got to do, we make sure everyone understands that simple message. What is it that is going to be done in this next part? And that's why it was great just hearing Ivan talking about getting PhD candidates to interact with a wider group of people, because that's where it really becomes key, understanding how you can communicate. Because you don't know if people are speaking their first language, you don't know if they're going to understand technical jargon, So how can you break it down to its simplest form so that everyone is on side and everyone understands where you're going, where you want to go, and they can at that point decide, are they sold, are they in with you, or is it something that's not really going to be for them?
Yeah, absolutely. No, it's really food for thought, all of what we've heard today. So I'd just like to thank finally everybody for turning up and listening to us today. And a final thanks to Birmingham Tech Week for allowing us to have this panel session. Thanks everybody for turning up.